On November 2, 2011, Russian authorities entered the home of Anatoly Moskvin, a writer and former university lecturer who lived with his parents. Initially suspecting him of possible extremism against the Muslim population, the police likely anticipated finding plans for an attack or extremist literature. However, what they discovered was far more peculiar. 29 life-sized homemade dolls scattered throughout the apartment. Welcome back to Crime Scene Archives. Today, let's delve into the unsettling tale of Anatoly Moskvin, a man whom the Russian media dubbed the Puppeteer. Brace yourself for a story involving black magic, ghosts, cloning, insanity, and abuse. A true crime report unlike any other. If you're intrigued by tales of the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, and true crime, consider liking, subscribing, and enabling notifications for more entries from Crime Scene Archives. The dolls, crafted from what appeared to be papier-mâché, were dressed in women's clothing. Some had buttons sewn into their faces as makeshift eyes, while others bore drawn-on features. Curiously, a few wore soft toy faces that had been removed and attached to their own. When the officers moved the dolls, an eerie sound emanated from some of them, revealing that several contained hidden music boxes buried within their chests, which emitted a jingle when disturbed. Strangely, some of the dolls had holes directly beneath their eye areas. The anti-terror police must have been bewildered by this scene, but their investigation soon uncovered a much darker secret. Each of these dolls concealed the mummified remains of 29 young girls. This revelation marked one of the most bizarre crimes in recent memory. Our tale unfolds in Russia during the year 1966. The era of stagnation must have been a challenging time for anyone growing up in the former Soviet Union. Harsh winters, a collapsing economy, and the need for alcohol to cope with daily life were prevalent. Born on September 1, 1966, Anatoly Moskvin was no ordinary child. His parents soon recognized his exceptional gifts. Anatoly was remarkably intelligent from a young age, earning him the reputation of a genius. However, like many brilliant minds, he struggled with social conventions. Anatoly led a reclusive childhood, finding it difficult to make friends. The loneliness and bullying he endured didn't deter him. Instead, he immersed in his studies, spending any available money on books and teaching himself multiple languages. Early on, Anatoly became aware of the darkness lurking in the world. One day, returning home from school with bruises, he revealed that he had been attacked and assaulted by an unknown man. But that wasn't the end of his strange experiences. At 13, Anatoly found himself embroiled in an even more peculiar incident, one that would set him on a path leading to his eventual crimes. Assigned to collect recycling materials for school, Anatoly participated in a competitive endeavor. Children roamed far and wide, gathering paper to bring back. On one such occasion, Anatoly found himself alone in an unfamiliar part of town, standing before a mysterious house. As he entered the yard, shock washed over him. The scene appeared to be some sort of funeral. 13 people stood around an open coffin, dressed in black cloaks and holding candles. Anatoly Moskvin, understandably terrified, attempted to flee the garden as quickly as possible. However, the closest adult grabbed his shoulder, leading him back to the coffin. Inside lay the body of 11-year-old Natasha Petrova. Although Anatoly had never met Natasha during her short life, she would profoundly influence his future. The adults at the funeral demanded that Anatoly kiss the girl's corpse. Terrified, he initially refused, crying and begging to go home. Despite Natasha's mother attempting to bribe him with sweets and money, Anatoly held his ground. Eventually, he succumbed to their pressure and was forced to kiss the cold forehead of the deceased girl multiple times. But this bizarre scene didn't end there. The kiss seemed to mark the beginning of an unusual ritual. Natasha's mother produced 2 rings, one for Anatoly and another for Natasha's ring finger. In their eyes, they carried out a twisted wedding ceremony, betrothing Anatoly to the corpse of an 11-year-old girl. After the rings were exchanged, Anatoly received a basket of fruit and some money. He was instructed not to tell anyone about the events for 40 days. This incident alone could explain Anatoly's future fascination with death and the afterlife. However, what solidified the dark path he was about to tread occurred a few nights later, when Natasha would visit him in his dreams. The ritualistic aspect of their supposed wedding had a profound impact on Anatoly. Natasha's spirit would visit him at night, offering to teach him the ways of black magic, an area Anatoly was unfamiliar with at the time. Despite initially declining her offers, Natasha persisted, returning night after night with the same proposition. She insisted that Anatoly learn about the practice of the occult, but Natasha had more demands. She wanted him to return to the village where they had been married. If he visited, she would vanish from his dreams. However, neglecting these visits allowed her to creep back into his mind late at night. Anatoly eventually confided in his parents about Natasha. Confused and concerned, they took him to a doctor who attributed these strange fantasies to puberty. The doctor prescribed Anatoly a sedative to aid his sleep. Yet Natasha persisted. Anatoly dreaded her visits. She terrified him, especially her insistence on teaching him magic. Eventually, Natasha struck a deal. If he performed a simple ritual for her, she would leave him alone. The catch? He needed a classmate's tooth to complete the ritual. Despite the challenge, Anatoly followed Natasha's instructions, and her spirit kept its promise, leaving him in peace. Still, he maintained an annual visit to her grave, perhaps to keep her soul at rest. Anatoly's interest in death expanded to include the occult and magical rituals, influenced by Natasha's persistent requests, albeit a little later in life. Anatoly Moskvin led a life marked by both brilliance and eccentricity. His academic journey took him to the University of Moscow, where he earned a degree in Celtic studies. Fascinated by ancient death practices and beliefs across cultures, Anatoly delved into the occult and esoteric knowledge during his university years. Despite his social reclusiveness, he found kindred spirits among the Luciferians, a group that delved into the left-hand path and magical practices. Dedicated to his craft, Anatoly took a vow of celibacy, prioritizing his studies over personal relationships. His past childhood traumas likely influenced his disinterest in sex. However, it was during this period that he regretted rejecting Natasha's requests to teach him magic. When he shared his experiences with fellow practitioners, they eagerly helped him explore the secrets of the occult. Around this time, Anatoly began experimenting with the dead, incorporating deceased animals into his ritualistic magic. Had the incident involving Natasha and the ritual sparked an interest in the occult that lay dormant until he found like-minded companions? Or was he guided down the left-hand path by forces beyond himself? After completing his studies, Anatoly became a university lecturer. However, his eccentric behavior made him challenging to work with, leading to his eventual departure. Undeterred, Anatoly focused on his passion for writing and other interests. Anatoly Moskvin embarked on a unique project alongside a fellow academic, visiting and documenting the numerous cemeteries scattered throughout the area. Given the messy historical records during the Soviet Union era, much local history had been lost. This project aimed to resurrect those forgotten stories, and surveying cemeteries seemed like the most sensible approach. Anatoly's fascination with graveyards was evident. He once described himself as being drawn to them like a magnet. To sustain himself during this extensive writing endeavor, Anatoly took up a role as a language tutor. His proficiency in 13 different languages allowed him to connect with children effectively. His mother observed his natural talent for communicating with young ones, and it seemed that these interactions brought him genuine happiness. Additionally, Anatoly authored several articles for various publications as he traveled. However, little did he know that these experiences would eventually lead to his downfall. Anatoly's expertise in graveyards grew exponentially. He claimed to have visited over 752 different cemeteries within a span of 3 years. He knew these resting places intimately, names, dates, and the circumstances of each person's passing. However, this exhaustive work took a toll on him. Mostly traveling on foot, Anatoly became physically drained from the long walks to the cemeteries. He resorted to drinking from puddles and sleeping wherever he could find respite. Whether his chosen sleeping spots were intentional or circumstantial remains a topic of debate. One morning, a group of drunken grave diggers stumbled upon him asleep in a coffin destined for burial, a peculiar encounter indeed. Anatoly's peculiar behavior, frequenting graveyards at all hours, made him a target for attacks and robberies. However, a more disturbing pattern emerged during his research trips. Anatoly had learned about the folk practice of sleeping on graves, and he developed a deep affinity for children buried in these cemeteries. He began sleeping atop the graves of young girls he encountered during his walks, and that's when things took an even darker turn. The children started communicating with him. These nocturnal visits resembled his earlier encounters with Natasha, the girl from his childhood funeral procession. Anatoly would sleep on the graves of children who seemed to like him. Armed with his knowledge of local history, he questioned these child spirits, attempting to discern whether they were genuine ghosts or perhaps disguised demons. In 2003, Anatoly entered into a seemingly spiritual but non-sexual relationship with a woman. Both desired children, and Anatoly had grown attached to the idea of having a daughter. However, due to his vow of celibacy and their unconventional relationship, adoption became their only option. They applied to adopt a young girl, but Anatoly's parents, with whom he lived, disapproved. Financial constraints and the denial of their adoption application strained their relationship, ultimately leading to its demise. Anatoly's grip on reality had already been tenuous, but this incident marked a significant acceleration point in his descent. Anatoly Moskvin's life took a chilling turn. After a heated argument with his parents about adoption, he sought solace in his spiritual haven, the cemetery. There he embarked on a macabre collection. His first act involved exhuming the body of a young girl, the initial step in a disturbing plan. Since Anatoly couldn't have a child of his own, he decided to grant another child a second chance. Armed with his growing knowledge of magic, he delved into necromancy, aiming to resurrect those who hadn't experienced a full life. Anatoly meticulously mummified the girl's remains and fashioned them into a homemade doll, dressing it in discarded clothes. Despite his magical efforts, Anatoly's attempts to revive the girl failed, yet he remained undeterred. He believed that science would eventually conquer death, and he felt compassion for children denied a full life. Anatoly kept the bodies, hoping that future genetic research would allow them to be cloned, a chance for these lost souls to live anew. Driven by this mission, Anatoly wouldn't stop at just one child. He needed more. Around 2009, police received reports of disturbed grave sites, but concrete leads remained elusive, stalling the investigation. Meanwhile, Anatoly continued to expand his eerie doll collection. Anatoly's eerie collection grew as he scavenged bodies from various cemeteries, bringing them home to join his warped family. Crafting faces for the dolls, sewing buttons onto their eyes, and applying makeup, he aimed for a lifelike appearance. Once again, Anatoly's parents dismissed the increasing number of life-size dolls as just another eccentric hobby. His mother occasionally caught him conversing with the dolls, calling him childish. When guests visited, they discussed Anatoly's peculiar art project involving the dolls. Meanwhile, neighbors detected the putrid odor of decaying corpses emanating from the apartment, but attributed it to drainage issues. Astonishingly, no one raised concerns about Anatoly's behavior or questioned how his parents endured the pervasive smell of death. Each summer, Anatoly's parents left the apartment, granting him freedom to live with his children without judgment. He knew their names, birthdays, and the circumstances of their deaths. Anatoly had favorites among the dolls, while others were relegated to the garage. His favorites remained in his room, where he treated them as living beings. He refrained from swearing in their presence, celebrated events, shared meals, played cartoons, and even drilled holes in their masks so they could watch TV. To Anatoly, these were not mere corpses. They were his cherished children. For nearly a decade, Anatoly continued his grim pursuit. He never disposed of any of the bodies. Instead, he added more and more to his growing collection. Anatoly had drawn the attention of the police, but not for the reasons one might assume. His controversial articles, including one on the history of the swastika, landed him on a list of potential extremist suspects. In 2011, after a terrorist attack, Anatoly was caught desecrating graves in a Muslim cemetery. His arrest led to a police raid on his home, where they uncovered the horrifying secret he had harbored for 9 years. Certain media outlets sensationalized this story, suggesting that the dolls were dressed provocatively. However, sexual attraction played no role in Anatoly's crimes. The choice of clothing was likely whatever women's garments he could find. Makeup was applied to give the dolls a lifelike appearance, and in some cases, he dressed them in the same clothes they were buried in. Anatoly acknowledged the illegality of his actions, but believed he acted for the greater good. He left grave sites undisturbed to spare relatives from further trauma. Yet parents continued to visit the graves of their children, unaware that their loved ones had been taken from them once again. Diagnosed with schizophrenia, Anatoly was deemed unfit to stand trial. He now resides in a psychiatric clinic, evaluated every 6 months to determine if he can be reintegrated into society. Anatoly Moskvin, a Russian former linguist, philologist, and historian, was arrested in 2011 after the mummified bodies of 26 girls and women, ranging from ages 3 to 29, were discovered in his apartment. His bizarre actions had gone unnoticed for nearly a decade as he meticulously exhumed bodies from local cemeteries, mummified them, and posted them around his home. Astonishingly, his parents who shared the apartment mistook the mummies for large dolls. Anatoly's interest in the dead had roots in a childhood incident where he was forced to kiss the face of an 11-year-old girl during a funeral procession. As an adult, he became a well-known academic, specializing in Celtic history, folklore, and linguistics. His secluded life, celibacy, and eccentricities set him apart. While some view Anatoly as a vile monster, others see him as a tragic figure mistreated by the Russian state. His case raises complex questions about mental health, morality, and justice. What are your thoughts? Should Anatoly ever be released? Feel free to share your perspective in the comments. In our previous video, we have talked about the case of Scott Nelson and how he and his gang mummified and disrespected corpses they murdered for pleasure, just like Anatoly did. What could have been their objectives? Find out by watching the video. Thank you for joining us here at Crime Scene Archives on this dark journey. It's been a challenging tale, and I appreciate your engagement. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this. Until next time!